And we do have a little bit of news about Letterboxd to get into as well today. A big announcement that hit my timeline, something that I was not expecting to see, but that I'm pleasantly surprised about.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and we can get into that. The only thing I would add is that you failed to brag about the fact Gavin was a beta Letterboxd user, so you've seen the entire evolution of it. I'm proud, and I brag way more than Gavin does. I'll be like, I've had my Letterboxd for 10 years, guys. I've logged 1,300 films. This dude's logged 2,000 films, and you're totally right. One of the things that makes Letterboxd really special, and then I'll quit rambling about it, is it's the only social media site I've never felt the instinct to be performative on. I've never felt the instinct to like collect how many people favorited my review or how many people follow me. Like for the longest time I had 8 followers on Letterboxd, and it was all of the people I knew who had Letterboxd, and that was it. You don't really have that whole like dopamine rush that you're searching for from validation from other people.
It's not as narcissistic.
Yeah, you get the dopamine rush from watching a film and then logging it and being like, I've had that on my list forever and it was awesome, or I can't believe everybody told me to watch that, it actually sucked. And then you're like having your own personal moment, and it really threads that needle and makes it a diary in a way that I feel like no other social media does. But you're totally right. You sent this to me, Letterboxd Video Store, what you need to know about our new feature coming soon.
Yeah. So again, this hit the timeline this morning. As a big Letterboxd fan, I was definitely surprised to see this. As it says, coming in early December, Letterboxd Video Store, our latest feature to get you adding films to your watch list and crucially checking them off. Here's everything you need to know. At Letterboxd, our biggest mission is film discovery, but discovery is only half the battle. It's frustrating to add a movie to your watch list and then realize you can't actually watch it. That's why we're trying something new and opening the doors to the Letterboxd Video Store, our own curated rental spot. This isn't a subscription service, no lock-in, no paywall. Just rent the films you want whenever you want and join the conversation with our community, logging, reviewing, and adding them to the list. So this is, a huge step for Letterboxd into a kind of new space, a new, field of the film industry, which is kind of like renting out movies. If you scroll down a little bit, I think we can read a little bit more details. It's a film rental platform inside of Letterboxd. Think is curated shelves instead of just scrolling lists endlessly without being able to make up your mind on what to watch. These shelves are built from what our members are actually hunting down, festival standouts that are yet to be distributed. That's something I'm super excited about, guys, because there is nothing that pisses me off more than when a film, premieres at a film festival. 6 months go by, a year goes by, the film still isn't being distributed, right? It's either hasn't found distribution or it has, but the company hasn't done a very good job of actually distributing it, so they're just like holding on to it. That really pisses me off. So if Letterboxd is actually able to deliver on this promise and make it easier for people to find the kind of festival standouts that are yet to be distributed, that will really, really be a huge feather in their cap, in my opinion. Something that will really fix an issue with streaming service culture, in my opinion. But that's only one of multiple different things they're promising here.
Not only that, it's also great for film fans who don't live on the coast. Gavin and I, we try and cram as many movies as we possibly can every time we go to like Los Angeles, or we've been going to New York City a lot more frequently recently, and we always try and see like 3 or 4 movies because you'll get to catch stuff that's just never going to play. We're in Kansas City, so we're really lucky. We have a couple of independent art house theaters. We have like the Screenland Armor, and we've got the Glenwood Arts Theater and all that kind of stuff. So we have good options to see movies that other people can't. But we were talking about the other day how we're both really excited for the upcoming Bygone film Resurrection. I don't know when or if we're going to be able to see that on the big screen. It would be super tight if it ends up on Letterboxd, where you can rent it for $4.99 or something like that. We've also talked about how the new Julie DeCournau film has been taking a long time to get distribution and showing in the United States. So as a film fan in middle America, as a guy who doesn't live in New York City or LA or Seattle or San Francisco or somewhere where you're going to get to see all of these films, no matter what, it'll have like a 3-day window, a 4-day window where, the Paris Theater or something in New York City is going to show it to people. Nighthawk will show it to people. The rest of the country, you might have to wait and watch it. And that's a valuable service because you're not just waiting around the clock, paying them $15.99 every month. It's like, I want to see that movie. It's on here. Potentially I can watch it for $4.99, $5.99.
100%. I also think what seems to be cool about this is it signals more curation as far as like the options that'll be available. As it says, it's like walking into your local video store and seeing the employee picks shelf, and those employees are countless Letterboxd members across the globe. And that is something that, people talk about how with streaming you have endless options, right? You can watch anything. There's so many more titles than even the biggest video store in the world ever, but it somehow feels way smaller. It somehow feels like you're more limited to whatever the algorithm is just kind of shoving on the main page, shoving on the home page. A lot of people don't really go much further beyond that. And it's true, even though technically there was less stock in a video store than on any one of these streaming services, it felt so much more curated and personal. And you would go in there and there would be an employee pick shelf, right? One of my favorite movies ever, a real throwback to the 2000s, is the low budget film Film Geek, that takes place in video stores around Portland. And that was a real thing. They had the employee pick shelf, right? And I always dreamed about being an employee at one of those video rental places and having the opportunity on a weekly basis to put 3 or 4 suggestions out there for the masses, right? My own curated picks. That always seemed really special. And again, you just don't really get that kind of thing on Amazon Prime, right? It's just kind of like whatever they want you to watch, whatever they're trying to push at the moment, in addition to just a bunch of like bland kind of stuff that anyone already might know about. So I'm really interested in that, and it does seem like Letterboxd is truly branching out as a brand beyond just being sort of this film diary, social media thing. Obviously, there's Letterboxd Journal, which is kind of their written work where people can submit articles and stuff like that. That's a really cool feature of Letterboxd. But I think they have ambitious plans. Zach, to me, this signals that they really are interested in getting into kind of film distribution. I wouldn't be shocked in the next 5 or 10 years if we start seeing like Letterboxd movies, like movies that have the Letterboxd logo at the beginning of them. I would not be shocked if Letterboxd tries to get into the actual distribution game and maybe even production. But definitely, I could totally see them, buying up small independent films, releasing them, distributing them, trying to build up their name recognition as a brand, kind of like an oscilloscope, or like something smaller, obviously, than A24, but maybe with the ambitions to eventually compete on that level with the Neons and A24s and those kind of companies. To me, this signals a real potential and growth for the brand. Hopefully, it doesn't ever come to take away what we love about Letterboxd. But I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I think they're having to adjust and grow with the times, and the fact that they're doing that ahead of the curve, I think, is really encouraging. I also think that one of the things we're seeing with all kinds of specialty media or niche media, it's exactly what happened with music in the music industry, right? You mentioned the menu fatigue of just the endless options that people get on all these streaming services, and so you go back to watching the same 10 things or listening to the same 100 songs, and the stuff that's fed to you is always the corporate stuff. That's like, what are the record labels trying to push, and what's Netflix trying to push, and all of those kinds of things. Now there is a market. What's remaining of the market is people like us, right? That people like us are making up so much of the remaining box office audience that now there is financial viability to kind of cater to people who have these specific interests. I was just watching a CBS documentary about how in Salina, Kansas, Gavin, more records are pressed than like anywhere else in the entirety of the Midwest, because there's this one genius vinyl record presser that does all these blues and jazz records out of Salina, Kansas. And all of these guys go from him because he does a really good job at making the record sound the specific way. And, forever ago, every record would have just gotten pressed already by the record company. But since they don't do that, it created this niche home for a new guy to do it even better than any other of the record labels were sounding, because of the quality that he uses in his vinyl and the way that he presses them. This is kind of like, another example in the film world of how something that wouldn't have been possible to sustain 25 years ago that's actually positive is going to have a new home. And I'm also really excited for the restorations. Just yesterday, I was watching Sergio Leone's final film, Once Upon a Time in America, and it always kind of bothers me when you can't find the full version of the film. Apparently there's 10 minutes missing from the Amazon Prime cut that I watched yesterday, and it's just like, damn, Martin Scorsese has access to those final 10 minutes, and if you buy his Blu-ray version of it, you can watch it. But on the broad, for the masses, streaming version, it's just 10 minutes short.
Yeah, definitely exciting stuff. If you scroll down to the very bottom, there's a couple more interesting details. Interesting stuff. Film discovery is a lot easier when you can just press play. Each film is chosen because members want to watch it, not just because it's easy to license. Rentals don't sit in a black hole. They live in our community and on lists, journal features, and even push notifications. It's accessible. Rent what you want, watch on the web, iOS, Android, Apple TV, Android TV, Chromecast, and AirPlay. Additional smart TV apps are in the works. So yeah, I mean, again, this is a huge step forward for Letterboxd as a brand. I mean, they're essentially launching a streaming service here, basically, although one that seems a lot more curated and interesting and unique than the ones that are currently available outside of a couple different ones like Criterion, for example. But yeah, I mean, to me, this really does signal that they're trying to increase their brand recognition, kind of, get into that streaming and distribution game. I think this is the beginning of something pretty big.
Yeah, and I think the other really cool thing that they're diverging from when it comes to the other big streamers is that they're not doing the monthly billing thing. It is very much just a, sign up and then pay for the one movie that you're renting, which is the old school video style. When you went to Blockbuster, you didn't have to pay $15-20 a month just to go into Blockbuster and take a look around and decide if there was anything that you wanted. It was like $3.99, $4.99. You got the film for your window and then you returned it. And I think that's going to be a much more enticing proposition to people because they're going to be reticent to sign up for another monthly recurring bill. But it's like, oh fuck, this is the only way I can watch that movie. Of course, I'll shell out $4.99.
Yep, and when you mentioned Blockbuster, Zach, that really gets my mind going. What would truly be cool is if Letterboxd started opening IRL brick and mortar versions of this concept where they actually offered physical media. Obviously, I don't think that would work in just most towns or communities, but in specific places around the country, in places like New York City, I think they could actually do that, and it would, people would really get into it. They actually could curate a really interesting, group of titles, and they could obviously sell other sort of merch as well, because that's the thing. The A24 model has really proven that people love sort of the aesthetic of film, and they love collecting memorabilia with movies. Like if you go on the A24 website, they sell more just like merchandise and crap surrounding their movies than they do actual movies. Like they have Blu-rays technically for their films, but not all of their movies. What they have a shit ton of is collectibles and little keychains and T-shirts and trinkets and all sorts of memorabilia that people like and have fun with. I think again, Letterboxd sees a real lane here, and if they want to, they could really kind of tap into that market as well, and create IRL brick and mortar stores that sell kind of movie memorabilia, stuff like that. Again, they could even get into distributing their own titles that they purchase. They could kind of start their own like Criterion collection where they release boutique Blu-rays. So cool. It'd be awesome. A Letterboxd branded boutique Blu-ray series, like that would be awesome. I genuinely think people would get into that. And although it is a small niche market, it is a pretty powerful contingent of people, like the A24 thing proves, that are willing to spend that kind of money on movie shit.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? The fact that people want something tangible, they want something to have and to hold. They, in the streaming world, in the streaming landscape, you don't really get to feel that sense of ownership and like physical connection to things. So at first I was taken aback. I was like, who wants a bunch of useless crap from the A24 website? But it's the same thing as anything. Like if you're a fan of something, you want to be surrounded by that. If you're into movies, you want to be surrounded by the props from it. Like Salisa, one of her favorite movies ever is Lady Bird. She bought the A24 script printed out Lady Bird, and it's a coffee table book. It's just a fun thing. And yeah, Letterboxd, Film Bros, people who are super fans of things, they're your perfect demographic to market to when it comes to like niche memorabilia or like niche content, etc.
Yep. So anyway, big news for Letterboxd. Definitely the beginning of a new era potentially for that company as they really start to spread their wings. Again, I hope they don't get too big, because I think that as we've seen with companies like A24, when you grow that much, questionable decisions start to come into play. Like for example, a lot of people have roasted A24 for their extensive use of AI when it comes to like marketing certain movies, and even promising to integrate it into movies going forward, stuff like that. So I don't want them to get too big. People have obviously there's been a lot of controversies with Mubi lately as well, which is a similarly kind of coded production company. People have issues with some of the investments they've done with like Israeli linked companies and shit like that. So I do worry about Letterboxd getting too big. Usually what happens when a company gets too big is that sketchy shit starts to go down. But I do like Letterboxd as a brand. I think it's a powerful brand. I think it has honestly more power than people realize as a brand in the film community right now, which is what they're about to harness. And again, 10 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if Letterboxd is even bigger, kind of like considered an A24 style brand.
Yeah, this is going to be an analogy that has like negative connotations that I don't really want all of the negative connotations to come from. But it feels like when we were using Letterboxd for a long time, like nobody knew what it was. Like it didn't even have an Apple app for a long time. It was kind of like bubbling under the surface. And then, as you've mentioned, it's kind of mainstreamed in a sense, but it hasn't hit the mainstream discourse. It feels a lot like the Joe Rogan experience did before it went like Spotify deal Joe Rogan. Like everybody knew about the Joe Rogan, but it wasn't really being marketed and capitalized off of. It would be really interesting if Letterboxd did get the same kind of name recognition that something like Neon or A24 has.
Yeah, and like I would honestly argue that it almost does have the same name recognition, just in a slightly different arena of the film world.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, I mean, anyone that knows about A24 knows about Letterboxd. You know
at this point, yeah, probably that's true.
Which is why I'm saying from their perspective, yeah, why not get into the distribution game? It seems obvious to me. And you know, they could really build a lot of name recognition and clout and you know, completely expand their operations if they want to, if they play their cards right. But yeah, this is an exciting first step towards something bigger, I think. And yeah, hopefully it actually works out and is as cool as they're making it sound.
Yeah, for sure. And to clarify, what I was meaning more is like mainstream normies will start to know, like, because I feel like mainstream normies do know like A24. Like my sister would know A24 and she would have seen A24 movies. But if I was like Letterboxd, she would be like, what's that? And I'd be like, Goodreads, but for movies.
Enough, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do think that there is that like gap left for them to really take advantage of, where it's like you see Letterboxd ads at AMC when you're going to the movies. Maybe not AMC, but you know what I mean? Like you see it when you're going down the street in New York City, a big poster for Letterboxd, like in a way that maybe we're not seeing quite just yet.
Yep, 100%. I definitely think they could continue to build their brand recognition if they want to, and it seems like that's exactly what they're doing.